15 plus years in the industry, built titles like Shadowgun Legends, Payday 3, and also now part of the design leadership team at Sharkmob. And you've also written a book, Game Economy Design.
They tend to think of it as 90% economy and 10% game design, but in reality it's more of the opposite. It's like 90% game design and 10% economy.
I always have a conscious thought in my mind, like, how long is this going to take me, really, to like get to the good part?
People want everything, but then you give them everything, they're not going to like it. I mean, that's what we get when we test game economy. We're akin to giving the same prize to somebody that did a marathon that somebody did a 10K. You're not going to feel good as a marathon. You're like, well, I did all this and this is what I'm getting.
How do I even break into game economy design if I don't have the ability to test it?
If you're building a gun, you can press play and you can see if it feels good. But you're building a game economy, you need all the stuff in, you need all the bits moving. So how do you test it? You know, you have to...
Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So for everyone at home, 15 plus years in the industry, you've built titles like Shadowgun Legends, Payday 3, and also now part of the design leadership team at Sharkmob, which is an extraction shooter, Exoborn. So, of course, I would love to get into the details of that, but we're mostly going to be talking about game economy design today. And you've also written a book, Game Economy Design. So you've written the book on game economy design, and you've been on the front lines of design teams across Europe, and has also started your own studio as well. So very, very nice conversation I'm looking into today. So just for everyone at home, we're going to be getting into building kind of more profitable, player-friendly game economies, the real job of an economy designer, because that's actually quite not clear to a lot of people. Then also how to grow in games when it comes to leadership without kind of losing the love for your craft. So let's get straight into it. So what I wanted to start with is kind of, we met at the Sharkmob office actually, right? So I came down there, you're working on an extraction shooter, which I found really cool. So my first question is, when I met you, I thought it was just game design. It's like, he does game design. And then like preparing for the podcast and chatting to you earlier, you said, actually, well, it's game economy design. I was like, isn't that just one feature? And you told me that's not. So I think it would be a good way to start the podcast. Like, what's the difference of kind of game economy design between monetization design or just general game design?
Yeah, I can go into some of the details. So basically, you can think of game economy design as like a subdivision within game design. So as in like the overall like picture for game designers, you've got guys who'll cover AI. There's also narrative designers, the system designers, people who work on various things. So game economy design is, you can think of it as like a type of system designer, but basically our consideration is the long-term player engagement. So you're building things that keep players retained, that keep players coming back. So you tend to be building systems that focus on resources that you're getting, distribution of resources, progression systems, and how they tie together. I personally think that progression systems, like that long-term engagement, how we track that, is quite closely related to game economy design, even though it could be seen as a separate system. And then, you know, how we distribute goods, and it's really the long-term goal. We think of those as metagame systems, the things that surround the main gameplay. So game economy design, it's like you sort of, there's this two schools of thought. You can almost build it something that you feel rather than experience, and it just keeps you coming, and that's like addiction loop, which you might, you know, hear in kind of casual talk about it. But also it's like a system as well. So you're still trying to build fun into the game and treat it like a system. And we also have as a role, like one thing is it tends to be a little bit more connecting the dots of other disciplines. So some other areas of game design might build a specific thing, you know, for example, AIs, or they might build a skill tree or something along those lines. But game economy design has that, but it's adjacent to those, but it also ties all the pieces together. So we're really thinking of the loop of engagement. So it's a subdivision of game design, but it's also a complex discipline itself. And it's also challenging as well. It's like a little bit more mathematically oriented. It's, you know, a bit of a blend of different sort of hard skills that you need to do the job. So that's hopefully a decent overview of my thought about it. There's also, like I should say, there's monetization design as well. That can be different at different companies. It's more like a commercially facing job. Personally, like I'm a commercially facing economy designer, so I've worked with monetization design, monetization management. I've worked in a publishing team before, so that was a slightly different role. Those people in monetization design, there is a lot of overlap, and you really want to build monetization into the game economy as well, depending on the business model that you're working on. For example, free to play mobile. but there's like it deviates in different ways, with the sort of day-to-day work and maybe what you're trying to achieve with it and your stakeholders and various other people. So yeah.
I'm thinking of the games I'm playing now, and I always have a conscious thought in my mind. It's like, how long is this going to take me, really, to like get to the good part, I guess. And I've noticed when I play test a game at a conference, yeah, like they have play tests of the game, and I don't know. Sometimes I play a game and I just get the feeling this would just take years. Like it would just take too long to get into the good stuff, like the end game stuff. From my understanding, like that's a part of economy design, right? Like how fast you get to a certain level of feeling in the game. Like I'm wondering, for people who aren't doing game economy every day but are working on games, like what is a common misconception they have about game economy design?
Um, that's actually it's quite a good question. Honestly, I do think that um, it's it's like they tend to think of it as, let's say, 90% economy and 10% game design. But in reality, it's more the opposite. It's like
Oh wow.
90% game design and 10% economy. I have to say that kind of a bit like wary of saying that because there is a distinction between like other types of design, like I just said. But there's this idea that you don't need to be an economist as such. I'm not. I don't have a qualification in economy. I actually did a degree in math, and it is more like a mathematical style of design. But that's definitely one of the misconceptions. You are still a game designer at heart. Um, you're you're playing just sorry, you're building games with just a slightly different mindset, with a different set of problems to solve. But like all game design, it's honestly more problem solving than creative, dare I say it. But it's certainly like game economy design is very, very problem solving oriented. You've got the puzzle pieces you need, and you put it into something coherent as the sort of architect for the project. So the misconception definitely is that it's more aligned with economy. That's just the word we use, and it makes sense. So we think of economy, but no, I mean it's really more of a game design role. So you are very much in line with the design team. Um, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I'm interested in also the experiences that people have when they just play a short amount of time at a conference, or for example, or an event, compared to actually buying and playing the game, uh, for a long period of time yourself when you've actually paid for it, and how your engagement changes and how you feel. So that's also an interesting topic that maybe we can go into further detail.
Yeah, we could. Like the games I play now only tend to be roguelites, because I don't want the feeling of this is going to take way too long to get good or to buy the good stuff. And I'd rather my metagame be the collection side of things and achievements. And then sometimes they give you new things. Like the biggest one I'm playing right now is Ballatra. Every now and then you can unlock a new card, but that actually took me a week. Now the only thing I'm going after is collecting the gold stickers. So right now there's no metagame that affects the game. But I really enjoy it. And obviously, there's an economy within that roguelite. But other than that, I don't quote unquote think about the economy. But if you look at most like mobile games or a lot of other games, like the only last real game I played was Red Dead Redemption 2. And with that one, I just felt like I had a full time job, and I was like, I put in a couple hours. It's like I just can't be bothered. It's just gonna take too long. It's just one of those. Like back in the day when I was playing GTA 5 all day as a kid, I could see myself doing it. And then like I guess now as an adult, I'm just thinking more. Yeah, I'd rather just only play roguelites or something which is more small, because I just don't want to have to think about like the long term grind.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you're kind of highlighting something that's sort of prevalent in the industry almost. I think that um, as we become more grown up, we have busier lives, and then the amount of time that you can realistically put into things, in theory, diminishes. I mean, the stereotype is the person that was playing a lot when they were a teenager, and then they go older, they have kids, and they have like 15 minutes a week to play a quest
Do
and
you
get
think
into
that's a
something.
real stereotype? Do you think that's
Um,
truth?
I think I'm not sure. I mean, this is a. I mean, I think so. I think that also there's an interesting, you know, timeline, I suppose, of how games have changed and what's happened with the type of games we built. There was this idea maybe 15 years ago or roughly that games were gonna, they needed to cater to more casual markets. They needed to be built for that market. For example, there was there's an article about it called the post-core gamer, and it was that stereotype of a player that's grown up and they now no longer have the time.
I
I
am
think this. I think
100% that
this.
stereotype.
I
So
mean,
I am that person, but I don't know if everyone's that person.
I think. I've thought about it. It's been interesting because we used to have our own studio. We were thinking about this in terms of what trying to break into different markets and stuff, and it was fascinating to think. I honestly, dare I say, I consider myself to be a little bit like that. Um, I mean, it's like adult life is busy, right? But I think that what happened was, mid-core mobile games took over, and they sort of filled in that gap for the casual person that doesn't have maybe the energy to do it. And then games actually got more and more complex. If you think about it, your Elden Rings and things. So the actual complexity of games was just growing and growing and growing. So that was like it was sort of fascinating almost that the game sort of
That's actually very interesting because all the games I'm playing are on mobile, and that's kind of a prerequisite. Like I wouldn't really bother playing it on Steam unless it's Jackbox, which is literally just a party game, right? This is just me. So I would only play it with friends on my laptop or on mobile. So I guess why even consider me in your game economy design? Like I'm thinking about Exoborn now. It's an extraction shooter. You're not thinking about me, the mobile player, right? Really? So like, should you even cater to them in the economy?
I mean, I think it depends on what your target audience is for the game. I mean, like I can't say anything really about the project we're working on, but all games, regardless, we have to identify a target audience and target games to that audience. You don't just, of course, we want everybody to play, want everybody to buy it. Of course we do, but that's not the reality. So you need to cater to a target audience. And all companies will have predictions of how many copies games will sell based on their genre and who they're tapping into. So I mean, we stick with our guns, I think, in this sense, and we're always going to build games for that audience who are the hardcore players who do stick with it. Coming to back what we said before, games got more complex. There's still the audience for that. Maybe just we don't see it, we don't relate to it ourselves in a certain way, but um, we're always wanting to build something that caters to the players that are naturally attracted to that genre. But then, of course, it depends on the vision of the game. Some games want to position themselves a little bit more towards the casual side, so they want to attract new players. And this deviates like with when you're building a game with the business and how the industry changes and various other things. Um, you know, Publishers will have way more data on it than me personally, but we always target something and then adapt based on the market. That's what we absolutely have to do. But I think regardless, we'll build a game with an audience in mind. And to be honest, you're still going to have the same patterns of engagement. You're still trying to hook people in different ways. So even if there is different business models and levels of hardcore, casual games, etc., you're still going to have design patterns in the design that you use to cook people, because we're all humans at the end of the day. We'll all still get into some kind of hook, some loop, and then we'll progress further. It's interesting that you say about not feeling like you want to progress and stuff. I'm curious about that. If it's something you feel from a game that you've not paid for, then it's entirely likely that you might feel like that. If you've invested in it, as in you've spent your $70 to buy the game, then the economy isn't going to just give you everything straight away. It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, because
People
that could
want,
also be a negative, right? Because that means like, I just only got 4 hours of progression.
yeah, it's so interesting because like you would people want everything, but then you give them everything, they're not going to like it. I mean, that's what we get when we test game economy.
The sliding scale, maybe, right? Like you're never going to please anyone, of course, but how do we find the sweet spot of like? I think Dune's an interesting one because it seems like everyone's happy, and from I've not seen or watched streamers talk about it, but from what I'm seeing, streamers are enjoying it, players are enjoying it, and someone said, "Oh, it takes 50 hours to get to the end game," and I'm like, for someone who I spent most of my time playing an MMO called RuneScape, end game for that is probably like 5 to 10,000 hours. But it's so funny that back then I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But now that I hear like, to get to the end game would take 50 hours on Dune, I'm like, I'm never playing Dune. It's like a completely different switch, even though I'm the same human.
So it's like you mean the target is still far away for you, basically, even if it's
Yeah, even though like back in the day, I'm like, oh yeah, 50 hours, that'll be a couple of weeks. Yeah, happy days.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, 20 used to think, what is it, games were like, it used to be 8 hours for a single player action adventure, and then now it's longer, it's more like 25 hours. Some of my
That
kind of
might be a good
favorites, like,
distinction, Charlie. Like, you've worked on both single player and multiplayer games, correct?
actually, honestly, not so much experience with the single player as such.
Okay.
I've had
Is
a lot more
economy
experience on
design
multiple.
much more of a multiplayer thing?
It, I mean, it can seem like that to all intents and purposes. I mean, you've often got um, aspects of game economy that are related to that, like, building up skills and progression and unlocking content, and you're going in, and maybe if you, for example, have a multiplayer game that's just, let's take a team deathmatch. You're going in playing. You've got a loop you can build around that. You've got resources you can buy. You can invest in things. Of course, you've got all this in single player games. So I think it's no. I mean, I think that there's economy everywhere, but you can be a lot more contrived, and a lot more controlled with single player stuff. In game design in general, so it definitely there's aspects of it, but I think you're talking more then about maybe progression systems and a focus on that, and the content, the building expensive end game content that's only single player. With PvP, in a very roundabout way might lend itself to some more parts of design we could call game economy. Yeah, I think there's
Is it
some
maybe
truth in it.
because there's also more problems to solve?
For
So,
sure,
like,
for sure.
it warrants a game economy designer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on average, yeah, from my experience, what I've seen, it would. I mean, it's also just the size of the games. Well, not every game needs an economy as such, but then I did work actually on like an MMO FPS, and yeah, they had a single player campaign, but we had, dungeons, and we had other modes and sort of PvP modes and everything, so all tying together. The economy sort of is brought to light through that. So, yeah, I would say it's like a series of different problems. And then, obviously all your mobile games and other things. So it exists. I don't think it's necessarily just for single player, or multiplayer, but I've definitely found more of the sort of the work experience through multiplayer games.
Sweet. Wondering if you allow me this. So I want to ask you a few quick fire questions for anyone who's either considering to go into game economy or should just know what game economy does because
Mm.
it's related to their role. So I have a few questions here. So, like, you said there's a lot of problems to solve in game economy. Could you maybe mention like one big problem, like a story that you solved that was kind of one of the hardest ones, just to kind of paint a story of like the types of things you're doing behind the scenes to like fix? Because when I hear you say fix game economy problems, I can't stop imagining, oh, it's a spreadsheet and this number needs to change and then this number needs to change, but I don't actually know what you mean by like all these problems. Like, could you give us one story?
Yeah, there's one that was like a really good learning experience from a few years ago. This feels like a job interview question, but that's
Sorry, I
that,
just feel like
that
I really want to know, like, what does it actually look like?
that's okay, because they're actually really good design problems to solve. So I had, for example, in the past worked on a game where um, it was like a first person shooter, mobile first person shooter, and the initial design of it, the system had basically taken the way the progression works in Clash Royale, if you're familiar with Clash Royale, and it had put it just like pasted it on top of it. So you were leveling up weapons in a certain way where you're getting random drops for those weapons, cards which basically upgrade weapons. And that functionally worked. It looked okay. You're getting proofs, and it seems to work. In the end, it just didn't feel good. Like, it didn't work. Player testers didn't like it, and basically the problem is sort of systemic. You can't just like blankly apply that method to that game, because if you think about it, when you're playing Clash Royale, you're getting upgrades are random. And I'm talking about Clash Royale of old, but I know it's changed a bit in the recent years. But when we were playing, I was playing it like 7 odd years ago. It was like this, and you had random upgrades, but every card you have is a playing piece, so you can legitimately upgrade them, and you're getting something meaningful for them. They all have different functionality. You can't just apply that to a catalog of weapons. For example, if you've got weapons, you're making minor tweaks to the fall off damage or the armor penetration or whatever it might be. So you're playing, and you're getting these tiny little upgrades to a catalog of weapons. in the end, it doesn't feel good because you might not be interested in them. You want specific play styles. You want to target different players. You might prefer shotguns. You do use different weapons for different cases. So it just didn't feel good. And on paper, it's like you graph it out and you're essentially normalizing it. So somebody at the very end of the game who's played 50 odd hours or 100 hours, they're getting tiny little increments, like 0.001% of an increase in damage because you have to stretch it out. And somebody at the start's getting the same, and it just doesn't feel good. It'd be akin to giving the same prize to somebody that did a marathon that somebody did a 10K. You
Mm.
know, you're not going to feel good as a marathon. You're like, well, I did all this, and this is what I'm getting, and yet it's sort of very insidiously crept into the design that we were that's what you're building, and then you're sort of wondering why the retention's all falling off. So that's a bit of a more extreme example, but it's those type of problems that you're solving. So something, we see sometimes playing games, you see a bunch of things ticking up, bars filling, this unlocks this, and this unlocks this, and you got this new item after playing this, you got daily challenges and all that. But there is a lot of almost like graphs with um, arrows linking them to how it all flows together and how everything connects. And that's what designers, the game economy designers, thinking of specifically is how it all maps together. But that was a really good problem to solve, and it's a good sort of systemic problem. Why is this not working? And then you dig deep and you find out the solution. So hopefully, it was a really good learning for me, and at the time, and I think it's hopefully it sheds a bit of light on the type of things we do as well.
Yeah, I want to dig into it a little bit if you allow me. The problem seems quite common. Like, this doesn't feel good. But then you explain why it didn't feel good. It's because, like, I put in effort and I got either a result I literally don't care about. Like, if I only like to be a shotgun player and 80% of my weapons by random is, semi automatic or whatever, then it's literally inconsequential. It's actually a negative that I got an upgrade there because I'm like, I wish I got it here. And then the other one you said, well, I see this a lot on mobile games, is just the percentages. It's like, 5% more damage boost. It's like, I don't give a fuck. I just don't care because it's not changing the decision I'm making in the game. So it just literally feels like a stock portfolio slowly going up over time. But then sometimes the big example for me, I don't want to slate the game, like Survivor.io. That game for me, number go up in terms of damage, but then the enemy's power scale at the same amount. So I'm literally just playing the same game. It doesn't affect me. Like, I don't care. So I'm just curious, like, in that specific problem, like, how do you go about solving that? That seems very hard.
So what we did was I think at the time it was a bit of a band-aid solution. Generally for those type of games, you want to give some kind of agency and choice to the player more. So instead of winning random rewards, you swap it to winning some kind of resource that you can then spend on upgrading specific types of weapons. So you can see, for example, you see in Call of Duty, or at least the ones from several years ago, you're unlock your leveling up weapons, you're getting mods, and then you're applying different mods, and you've got like a bunch of sort of what we call horizontal progression, where you're getting more and more strategic elements that are unlocking. Sure, you want to control it, right? You don't want to give everything at the start, so you still have some degree of things unlocking, but over time you're building up potential to play with different styles. Sort of giving the player more, yeah, like
So they haven't got all the choice at the start. They're unlocking more choice as they go, which I think is a big difference.
that's definitely like horizontal progression is that we talk about vertical and horizontal progression in games, and horizontal is you're unlocking more choice, more capacity, more options to a bit to have a bigger strategic arsenal, I suppose, of what you can do, how you can play, how you can customize equipment, weapons, or characters, whatever it might be. And then you've also got vertical progression where you're just boosting power. You're just adding power. So, and that's in this case, what we've done wrong is we're just adding power onto things in a certain way. Sure, it has some horizontal aspects, but in this case, we wanted to sort of take inspiration from what other shooters do, and I think that was one method to solve it. So we gave resources that you could then spend. And then then beyond that, we can be creative. There's so many different ways we can build that into the game. I mean, we're always looking for ways to improve, obviously, and do fun things. I think as a side note, for example, I mean, some innovations with Marvel Snap. It's a bit of a separate thing, but
Played a lot of
you're
Marvel Snap, actually. I quit Marvel Snap because it got too good. I'm the worst retention. I'm the worst retention person to track because if you see when I drop off, it's usually when I've peaked my experience. Because I'm like, oh shit, I'm having too much fun. I need to quit before I get too good. So if anyone's tracking that, they like, no, the game was good. That's why I dropped off. But yeah, Marvel Snap, I put in too many hours. I was actually one of the few games where I was like, okay, I have to buy the monthly pack. The value was too good. Like I was hooked.
It's really good. Like it's very clean. Like I as a math person, I really love the system. I put a study in it in my book. I kind of did a bit of a breakdown of it to see what made it
What did you
tick.
find? Very curious. Is there anything
Um,
that another person can take away that isn't on a card game, for example?
I mean, the first of all, the system for upgrading your rarity of cards, whether it's just a cosmetic upgrade for rarity, was a really cool innovation at the time. Um, it's generally what's the economy is very very clean is the best way to describe it. It's very systematic, so you can imagine somebody with a very clean series of numbers in spreadsheet where you upgrade this by plus 2, 4, 6, 8, something that looks very sort of pleasing to a number person. So you got a good feel for it to upgrade. You've also got this nice synergy between the boosters, which you use very specifically on a unique card, and then the soft currency, which I think is called credits, which you're getting to spend in tandem with that. And then of course, you can buy cards, but it's a very inefficient way of spending, so you're going to run out of credits, and then they feed it, they make you do daily missions to get more, and then you can spend real money to get more daily missions. So they're limiting the supply of that currency, but sort of making you spend. I would be interested to know how the monetization went. I hadn't read any articles about it. I hadn't really followed it recently. I'd played it a while ago, but the monetization I thought could have been a little bit stronger. In general,
Is
with
it more spend depth, you mean?
potentially. I mean, it felt like the store did feel like it was a lot of bundles and things just thrown at you with cards. I didn't like. I thought there could have been. I think this. I mean, in terms of spend depth, probably okay. I just thought that
Because it was capped.
the,
It was one of the things that they ran in their ads.
mm,
Like, you're not allowed to buy every card in the game on day one. You are limited by your playtime, which I thought was an
oh,
interesting thing to come out with.
yeah, interesting. I mean, to be honest, I probably need to look at it again. I thought that the buying variants was a cool thing because you buy a variant for real money, and then you basically have another card in your pool which uses the same boosters that you can for another card you have. So you're essentially widening the pool of cards you have, and therefore when you play, those upgrade as well as the existing ones. So in theory, you're buying. Or when you spend, you get more progression a bit faster. So it's a very roundabout way of spending money, and then you get to progress just that little bit more without realizing it. So it was quite a nice way of tying monetization into the game. That's a bit of a more in-depth thing, but it's certainly you know
Yeah, I found it very interesting. I brought it up on Claude here, and it's telling me like things about the monetization, yada yada. Um, that's interesting. The current state of Snap's monetization forces players to do what they don't want to do. Too much work for too little return, and they amplify FOMO too much. That's just one random source they put. But it was interesting tying here. This is probably more marketing, but like the revenue soared by 300% when a Deadpool pack was released that coincided with the Deadpool movie. I was like, okay, interesting. But yeah, it's probably more marketing.
for sure. Like by the way, we found that with monetization, what sells really well is when you tie in content into films that have been released.
IRL, yeah,
If you're selling, like, I don't know, it could be colors, and if people can customize and make their favorite film characters from
because you're selling
customization.
feelings, right? Because
Yeah.
like that's a big thing for me. It's like I have an in-game name on RuneScape called Hoods, which is just a hood. And any game I play, if there's a way to have a hood or be like the Grim Reaper, I will throw money at it just because I like that feeling. So if anyone loves Deadpool, then any game they play, Marvel Rivals or Marvel Snap, they will probably be like, yeah, I'm just going to spend more time and attention on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, we were talking, about monetization and how that sort of differs. I think, like, I've always found cosmetic monetization really interesting. If you're just selling
Does that
pure
play into
cosmetic goods.
economy design? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, I mean, we do to some extent. I mean, there would be a separate job in a sense. I think also if you're playing just in-game stuff and functional content things that you're playing, and then if you're monetizing that, we can sort of think of that separate. But there's always a loose tie-in. with the cosmetic stuff because how it relates to what you get for free. If you're obviously going to play and you're going to get some stuff that is free, and then also if you're unlocking cosmetics, for example, is a good one, because what you generally find with cosmetics is it's subjective, right? You can't really put a value on something. Sure, if something's got a lot of work's gone into it and it's got fire effects and everything, it's going to look very premium. But you can't really pick and choose what people like. It's more of a classical sales problem. Like, what do people want, and then sell it to them. So if you have a complex progression system and you've got cosmetic rewards, many games do it, but it's not always the most optimal way, right? Because you're going to play and you're going to unlock this mask that I don't really want to wear because I've just customized my hair to look the way I want it. So, you're going to be like, it's not the best reward to give. It might be better to come up with some other solution, like give a currency that you for free, or a special currency that you can then buy that cosmetic with, for example. But yeah, we do think about it, like how it ties in, and also what like if somebody's spending this amount of money to get this thing, and if somebody can grind it to get the same thing or something of similar level, it tells you a lot about how people value time. What they're going to spend their time on to get, and um, or rather they just buy around. But in general, like buying stuff that looks nice or it relates to some of their favorite characters in some other media, that is just um, dependent on the person, and some people will buy it. Like I've started buying some battle passes. I play the finals quite a lot, which I really enjoy, and I buy the battle pass for that. And I'm a bit hooked on it. Like I put some time, I get some progress, and I want to buy it. So it's more, I think for me, I just want to spend. It's sort of got me. I think the daily missions got me, so I got progress, and then I feel like I feel like almost FOMO, I guess. From like I'm.
What are they doing well? Maybe it'd be good to highlight.
I mean, that's the store, like when it first came out, and it's still pretty good. The store is really well designed. Like it's a really beautiful in-game store. It's like the product ownership, whoever's managing that, did a really, really good job. It's very sort of, and this is more for like people who are devs, but if you're building content, you've got to store it and you've got to grant entitlements to players so they own this item, and it's handled in quite a neat way where it's all in the game, and then the store is a subset of that. So it's a nice arrangement. But in general, I think it's really well built. I think just of late, the daily missions that give you progress are really nice and easy, and I got into that real compulsion loop of playing 45 minutes a night, for example, and I get some progress and I feel good about it, and then it speeds up towards the end. Um, Towards the end of a season, it sort of gives you a bit more. So it was generally a really I think it's really well done. And also, this is not so much game economy, but one thing that I really like is the when there's a creative, vision that gives developers a lot of leeway to
Mm.
build things, like the whole setting in a virtual reality thing. It just allows you to justify so many things that you sort of accept that as this is the way it is. You can do what you want. You can turn off fall damage. You can do this, and it's all part of the game show. So there's like infinite ammo on the web. It allows you to sort of
Gives them a lot
cut.
more creativity, right?
I think so. I think so. There's other games that have taken similar approaches, but in that sense, it's a really it's almost like a smart decision to make it like that, because it allows you to be more creative and have less sort of constraints. If you're, I mean, an example, there's other examples where you're like you might have, I don't know, currency in a game that wouldn't exist because it doesn't fit the world and you have to justify it, for example. But with this, you can just sort of put what you want, and it ties in, and then it ties in creative ways as well.
Before I move on, because I'd love to dig into, like, you started a studio. I'd love to know a bit more about that journey. Before I kind of go into that part, I wanted to ask, in-game currency, like the one that can be made for free, and like premium currency. Cheeky question, like, what do most game economy designers get wrong between these two and the balance?
They are like they should be tied together. They are tied together. I mean, I don't know if game economy designers are necessarily getting it wrong. Like from what I've seen, I mean, I can't see from the end result, but from a development standpoint, you really want to map everything to time, and then their time is a base. We all share 24 hours a day, kind of, even way of the time. So when you're playing a game, you're getting a certain amount of resources by this amount of time, and then your pre-currency, your soft currency, is gonna be generated by playing the game, finishing missions, killing monsters, whatever. And your premium currency might be, or it might just be a separate thing that you buy. But even so, it's still going to be tied in some way together. We will come up with some way of measuring what somebody does. Like we often find metrics to measure. This is not metrics in the analytic sense, but like ways we can track how things are. Like if this
Could I ask
currency
you
links
about
to
that?
this. Mm.
Like that's an interesting. I don't think about. Okay, so when I make buying decisions, I always know back in my mind that I'm taking into account the time it takes to get it normally, right? Like if I want to buy a premium pass, how long does it take to get it by doing it the free to play way? And then I will make the decision. Oh, it's worth it to do the free to play way, and then I'll do that. But from the sound of it, this is just like a formula. Is that done continuously? Like calculating, all right, we're going to give for X amount of playtime around this resources. Is this like a problem that is solved quite quickly in a company? Is it one that is constantly evolving? I'm very curious.
It's definitely a problem that we solve a lot. It's always evolving. I mean, you have to just test it and see. This is the idea that we often spend the time in the math and in spreadsheets and calculating this. Reality is you want to test it and see how it feels for different players in different games, and just depending on the game, there's this X factor that you don't know, right? But there's always calculations done. You know, we've got a theory where we do some math and we give this much by this time, and depending on how it ties to other content in the game and what's given, is it working? Is it hooking players? And then you test it, and usually you model it, math, spreadsheets, whatever. Maybe you'll have some software tool. There's other tools you can use. Maybe you're working with a programmer. There's maybe more creative or more tech savvy ways of doing it. Depends on the company or just the job changes everywhere. But then you obviously put it out to test with players and internally. You'll also have play tests, and then you're going to have larger play tests, and you also get data from actual players as well when you launch. So you've got these three angles of attack that you're taking to judge how things are working. But one thing to stress is, like I say, it's formulaic. It's still a creative discipline, right? You still don't know. We typically say you put it out to players and they do something that completely blows your mind, right? And you have you didn't expect it. So it's always a process that we're adapting. But there's usually some type of strategy gone into it for sure with that when you're choosing the time, the time it takes to get this amount of thing and what you can buy with it and what you can't buy with it and how much more you need to do to get this, which allows you to do this, which is going to be fun, that type of thing.
You mentioned a few times in our conversation, like, does it feel good? And I feel like I see a lot of games, they sometimes give a survey. It's like, hey, did you enjoy your play today? It's like a yes or no. I'm like, if you're the person receiving that data, how do you know why something feels good or not? Right? How do you know it's because of the resources? Like you said, you do play tests and you do it internally. Are you specifically asking them, hey, how did the resources feel? Like, is it still a bit more subjective, or is there a more specific way that you can test how good the economy feels?
Um, I think we've got this too. Like you're going to have qualitative, quantitative feedback. So for sometimes it is just asking people. You're getting surveys, and you will do that in playtests, like how things are feeling. You'll get feedback from the community, and you'll get feedback from influencers and people if you're going to events and you're testing the game, there. Um, we're also just looking at, we'll look at players kind of what you feel internally. I mean, it's a bit of a point of contention how things feel because, as we know, a half-built game is not the same as an end game, and how things feel can change, and you never really know. And you've got your own opinions. If your 10 other people think something different, doesn't your feel doesn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, we'd try and look at data as well as we're building it to see what seems sensible. Um, I mean, I think a sensible starting point is that you know if you think the average person, right, they're going to play in a couple hours a night, they're going to play more at the weekend. Then if you're kind of on the right track, if you're getting this much in 4 hours, you've got 2 evenings a night. Most people might have a Tuesday and a Wednesday. They probably not they're not doing other things, so you can kind of be sure they're going to get some kind of progress. So I think there is just that common sense aspect of it when you're
Mm.
planning things out. And then and the thing is, and I also to stress is that the people that hammer something for 15 hours straight, that's an edge case, right? That doesn't represent the normal person. So yeah, maybe a game economy, if it can handle that, cool. If it kind of breaks and it is not providing anything, then I mean, you really want. I mean, you want to cater to people like that, right? You always do, but it doesn't represent the norm. So you have to design within reason. You can't just make everything stretched out to the point where it alienates the majority of people.
Yeah, for sure. You have moved around, Charlie. You have moved
Yes,
around.
I have.
Yes. So, what did moving around teach you? Maybe about design. Like, did you bring anything from different studios to where you are now?
Oh, definitely. I mean, working like I don't know if it's worth giving my story, like the bit of background. I mean, I worked in
Yeah, tell us the
Scotland.
story. Like, you've been around, and obviously now you're in the UK again, right? Or is it
Uh,
in Sweden? No, you're in
I'm
Sweden. Sorry.
in Sweden. I met
Sorry.
you in Sweden. No, no.
Yes, you did. I'm sorry, I forgot that. There's two. There was two offices, but yeah, Sweden. So yeah, it would be good to just a quick refresher for everyone, like the story and then what happened.
Yeah, so I mean, I was like years ago. I was working, studying in Scotland, and then I had like I went to do some time in the QA department. I worked in Rockstar North briefly on the expansions to GTA 4. So that was back in the day when I was doing testing, functionality testing, and then I'd done another course. I went back and studied again actually after that, and then from that course we started a studio with three other friends, and it became more successful I think than we thought. We were mainly doing work for hire. It was a time when you could charge 69 cents for a mobile app. It was like that point, 15 odd years
69
ago.
cents?
Yeah, back when you could charge for premium app, people would pay for mobile apps, like in
Oh, sorry, I
uh,
thought you meant as a work for hire. So you meant to like two consumers on the App Store and then
yeah,
get a decent amount of money for it.
yeah. Basically, you could sell apps and stuff. It was that was days gone by, right? So it was at that point we're doing a lot of web apps, we're doing serious games. So we had our own company. I mean, it was basically starting from the four us guys working on the kitchen table, trying to build games, doing that whole thing. You're eating noodles, you've no money, etc., and you we're working away at that, and then um, we went to some events, we got a bit of work for hire, just small things, and then just built it up, and we'd get a project, and then we get a bit of a reputation, and we'd be connected to another client, and we'd start to take on work. So we just built up this work for hire business, and we did our own games as well. Um, so it was a cool. I mean, it was a really cool learning experience. We did some long days, and it's like a emotional roller coaster of things are working, things are not. Really cool. Very like highly recommend to everybody. I mean, it did relatively well. Obviously we wished it could have done a bit better. When we finished with that company, we kind of wound it down. It was a bit of a tangled web of things where we merged it with another business, and I'd left at that point, and I had never lived abroad. I'd always wanted to live abroad, um, and I decided to move, and I moved to the Czech Republic, and I started working there. Worked for a few years, then I moved to Spain, and I worked in Spain in Barcelona, which is awesome, by the way. I like living in Spain. Early 30s is an experience that, I'd recommend everybody try.
I was considering it, Charlie. I was really considering it. I was gonna like move there for 3 months, 6 months of the year. Um, yeah, Barcelona is a very nice place. I concur.
Yes, it's yeah, I have really really good memories of that. And then I came to Sweden, which is like the polar opposite. But I had a really good time in Sweden as well. I mean, it's been a really cool place for career. So I moved to Stockholm, and I've worked there, and then now I'm actually in Malmo. So I moved down. Working in different studios is really interesting. It's a different work culture everywhere. How the people are different, the sort of expectations. I mean, there's obviously the labor laws and everything, and how that affects how people work. Um, some places are tougher than others. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, it's really cool. And then working on different sizes of teams, different business models that I've worked on. Like I was in mobile before, then I moved to AAA, PC and console, like more recently. But yeah, the games industry is really good for that. It's a really good place to you can work anywhere. Your skills are transferable. So you even as a really junior level, you've really got chances to get work permits. Since that disaster that happened, that was Brexit happened, that made it more harder to move. It's more problem, but you still get opportunities to work and live abroad in the games industry. So it's really awesome that that's the case.
Sweet. So if you're speaking to Charlie 10, 15 years ago, and now that you've kind of worked at these different cultures, you mentioned that there's a lot of different cultures, right? So when it comes to someone who's kind of more fresh, or maybe someone who's not worked in different amounts of cultures, like what is the thing that you realized that was like, oh, did not expect that, and that maybe changed the way you either lead teams or do design?
Mm. Um, so like I think in Sweden, it's a really nice place to work. It's quite a soft culture, I should say. Um, the work life balance, people really appreciate work life balance. Um, it's a generally. I don't know like, how much I can say because it sounds a bit cynical at times, but it's very much a sort of we'll discuss it next week. We'll align. We have to get everybody aligned on things, so it's quite meeting heavy. You want everybody to
Very
agree.
democratic, I've noticed.
Definitely, like 100%. It's very much people are aligned. It's flat. It's not. I don't think it's quite as flat as people like to think it is. There is a certain hierarchy in it. It doesn't always feel like as as flat as they say, but it's a really nice place and definitely democratic. You've got everybody mixing in, and you do have to come to some kind of agreement. You have to also be very careful, mindful about how you speak with people. And like how you lead and like when you sort of get to that more directional type of leadership where you want to tell people you need to do this, there's always ways you handle it. I'm learning that it's really interesting, but it is overall like a really pleasant. um, Other places are not so pleasant, so
I
it's
want
really
to
nice.
touch in on this because I think this will be useful for people. When someone's disagreeing with you, right? Let's say stakeholders are pushing back on the economy choice you've made. Like, how would you go about defending it? Maybe if you're like newer to a business, like you feel like you know what you're doing, and someone disagrees. Like, how do you kind of defend your, I guess, choice?
Specifically, like what I've done is you want to in a structure you want to obviously show that you've done the work and you've put the thought into it and that you have you know experienced stuff, and then you want to show evidence, I guess, that this would work. And then in a bigger company, I typically you'd want to take it to your manager and then try and escalate it to
Yeah,
a director or something higher up. And of course, in some level, you have to pray on their goodwill that they're going to trust their senior people or developers that have experience that they want to bring it to the table. So you are reliant on that a bit. But I think you just want to be diplomatic about it and then push it. I mean, the last thing you want to do is sort of throw a tantrum and that this is not working and everything and become negative about it and cynical and stuff. I mean, that generally doesn't work, I think, in anywhere, right? So I think it follows that pattern. You sort of want to, like, if things haven't worked, you want to look back and reflect and see how things can better and generally show that quite senior experienced mentality, and then you'll probably find that good things will start to happen. If like I myself have built games, so I can always say to like a director, like, I've done this, we want to do this, but it honestly hasn't worked the last several times. So can we look at some other solution or something like that? Something along those lines. I mean, that usually will find it works. Especially it works here. It's a good way of approaching your work life, I think, in Sweden as well.
sweet. So it's coming at it with evidence. Like, maybe just to double click, like when multiple people are disagreeing, because you lead a team, right? Like you're so when if some of your teams are disagreeing, like I feel like how do we get like multiple people on the same page? Like especially with a game and a game building a game in today's context is quite, in my opinion, scary. Like because it's not like before where I feel like you make a game, it does okay, then you make another game. Like right now, I feel like it's like very boom or bust. At least from my feed on LinkedIn, like it can be quite scary when like people disagree on direction, for example. At least this is from the outside looking in. Please correct me. So how do we get people to kind of get aligned as a leader?
Hmm. Um, that's like, yeah, that's quite an intricate question. I mean, I think you're going to have a complex team. I think that there's different types of leader. I think also, so I think it depends on the type. I do more development management, so I'm looking at different
We can
people
break
and
down
and,
that. Like,
and working.
what's your experience?
Um, I mean, my experience was like I have had experience of being a lead where I've at my own company we were leads. You can be like a craft lead, for example, where you're doing a portion of the job as well, and getting people aligned on that is you're probably going to have more coordination over, and you can maybe be a little bit more directorial, and you can say like we are going to people should want to sort of follow your example a bit. But at the same time, um, I'm actually a little bit more disconnected from the craft side of it. So I'm looking at different people. So getting people aligned is a little bit separate from what I do at the moment. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's just about striking a balance, I guess, between um, you know making sure that somebody feels like they've got agency to work on something and bring their own thing to the table without micromanaging, but also knowing when to step in and be a bit more like directorial if something is faltering. Because it's really important if things go wrong and people are not performing, for example, you really have to step in and act on it, and you can correct that for sure. But you also want to almost like let things happen and let people bring their own. You always, we have that way of working, I think, in many companies where you give people the space to do their thing and almost like let it explode to some extent, and then people will correct themselves. If you just always holding hands and like doing it kind of everything yourself, for want of a better expression, it's not going to produce the best results in the end. And then people almost might not agree, but they wouldn't even let you know, and you can't get people to open up as much. This is my experience. It is quite a complex one to break down.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I mean, we have to ultimately. It is on some level, right? It is a job that we have to do. We go in to build a product that you're answerable to somebody. I think it's the same in any career and walk of life. In any career, you're going to be answerable to somebody. So you do have to, at some point, accept that you're a professional. It's your obligation, and you have to do the bit that you need to do. So we can't just all disagree and expect it to float, really. Um, so yeah, I mean that's the best I can do. But it's interesting, like the balance between individual kind of coaching and bringing up people, and then that little bit of a team dynamic. But I'm definitely more into at the moment into the individual and seeing how we can kind of optimize their work and performance.
Sweet. Charlie, this is just something that's been on my mind recently. Just curious. Like, when you have a creative job like yours, but you also have people management. So I have, I guess, similar in my. I have a content agency, so I'll lead a team. Also, go out and about, and then I have to have time for deep work. The way I'm working now is very different to how I started. Just curious, like after 15 years, like how do you structure your week, your day? Just curious.
It's actually something we've had to solve, because what we find is,
Mm,
right, when you you might find it very difficult to with difficulty would probably be my answer. If you have to do leader work, or have what we call a helicopter view of things and a strategic view of the product or of the team. You've got your kind of line part of the organization, the project part of the organization. It's very, very hard to do that and then get into the nitty gritty. So you really need somebody else to do that. You will start to falter almost certainly. That's just what we've consistently found, that just doesn't work. You can't be an analyst and a mathematician and delving into thousands of complex numbers, for example, and also being having an overview. And it depends
just
on
to
how many
double check,
people.
Charlie, are you saying that, for example, if someone's a practitioner, an individual contributor, and then also managing his peers, you're saying that just doesn't work in general, like in the long term?
No, it's a little bit more than that. So what we generally find is that it depends on the number of people that they have that they're managing. So a craft lead, for example, somebody that does a portion of their job is people management, and a portion of their job is the actual discipline,
Craft, yeah.
the craft. Uh, if they have, let's say, like 4 to 5 people reporting to them, it's probably workable. The other thing that makes it workable is if their job is more about producing something tangible where they know what to do and their team all do more or less the same thing. Producing things like content, for example, could be a good example. Animations, whatever. If you're leading that, you can have these people work and do it. If the team that you're working on are people who are designers, I find it especially hard with economy designers, where I have people reporting who cover live events, they cover other systems design, they cover different portions of the game, and each of those people have their own stakeholder management, and they're having problems with communication. If you're at the epicenter of that, it's much, much harder to get into the details and lead, and even be a project manager type person for that organization. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely stressful. You've got a lot of things happening that you just don't know about. It's like trying to look for a needle in a haystack without knowing that somebody's lost it in the first place. It's really, really complex. So I think it's always like nicer if that you can almost separate that out. So you have somebody focusing on people and bring up people, and you can have you can really divorce that from the project part of it, where you're somebody else who manages the project. They're kind of like a project manager. You probably have somebody else who's the feature owner, who's more like a product owner in that sense, and they're owning and managing their own stakeholders there. So um, I think it depends. Again, on the number of people reporting, to summarize, and the type of job that that person's doing. At least that's what we've picked up from my experience so far.
Fair. So, with I guess like your days, do you try to put your calls in the afternoons, for example? Like, I'm just curious. Like, do you have like deep work blocks? How do you structure the day?
Usually, I try. It's usually a mixed bag now with what I do. Typically, before when if I was doing more craft type leadership, I would try and focus calls maybe in the middle of the week a little bit more. That just seemed to be how it goes. I try to get stuff out the way in the morning, typically in terms of calls and stuff. I want when I needed focus time, I'd need to have a bit of a clean road ahead of me, just so as I could get into it. Some of the problems you solve are not. You can't just say it's going to take 20 minutes. It could take as long as it takes a bit. So I try and get that stuff out of the way. Now it's the more people and people responsibility you have, you usually have a little bit of a more an open schedule. Now it's more you have to be just reactive, really. I mean, you're going to get curveballs, left, right, and center. People will be people. You're going to have issues here. This person has a problem, or maybe somebody has a problem with what they're doing, or there's some other problem. So now it's you just never really know, and that's part of the fun of the work is that you go into work not really sure what the day's going to hold. Um, it's maybe not for everybody. Some people just want to get in and do the thing. But I really found that now it's a bit open, so I don't really have that schedule. I can't target certain parts, but yeah, absolutely. You can obviously block out focus time, right? You need a few hours. You can mark focus time just whenever, and you can get on with stuff. But no, normally now it's a bit an open structure. Before it was maybe a bit more tangible.
Sweet. No, I'm just curious because I'm always looking to see how people like structuring their day. Because I feel like when you have that situation where anyone can take your time, I'm personally quite scared of that because after a while I'll be like, ah, I didn't do that task I wanted to do today because I did what this person needed to do. And I feel like in a creative role, um, it's quite hard to just, I guess, I don't know, stay on the ball. I just feel like using the word hard a lot, but yeah, I just feel like making games is very hard. So I feel like managing oneself is also quite hard.
Oh, definitely.
Sweet, Charlie. Before we wrap up, I'm just curious on the. Is there anything you want to say on the economy side that we want to kind of maybe break some beliefs today? Like anything that you want to say that you wish every kind of person working in games should know?
Mm. Uh, so I think it's uh, it's a really good job, game economy in general. I think it's a fascinating area. I think it's something that you know, it's always going to be like a very valued area of the game. It's almost quite a respected thing to do. It's generally seen as I have to be careful to say it's a little one of the more difficult areas of game design to do. It's something
Say it.
that's
Say it.
it's
You're doing the
it's
hardest job.
my job is harder than everybody else's, right? It's it's quite a well paying subset of game design. It's and you just find yourself you know you need a really solid education. It's really quite mathematical. It's just generally difficult. The problems you're solving are harder. The the stakeholder management you do is harder, and the people are just typically a bit more senior. It's a really cool thing, and the game education, by the way, has got better, but it's still, I think it's hard to train as a game economy designer. You can't just make a vertical slice in the same way as you can if you're building levels and then show it. You need to prove it. You need to build commercial projects and show what you can do over a finished product because it really sort of takes shape and then it's a finished product. The also thing it's really hard to test, I should say. When when you're you know if you're building a gun, you can press play, and you can see if it feels good. But you're building a game economy, you need all the stuff in, you need all the bits moving. So how do you test it? You have to get that
How do you
experience.
test it? How do I even break into game economy design if I don't
I mean,
have the ability to test it?
you mean if you how do you break into it as a job and stuff, and how do you?
Yeah, because if I'm trying to get my first ever job on game economy design, there's probably very few companies willing to put resources into someone who doesn't know economy design. I'm assuming.
Get a good sciencey education, and then also you could also look into breaking down and analyzing games from an economy standpoint. Get a job as on the design team to start with. Just you probably start as some kind of game designer, just straight up game design position, and then you can start focusing more on game economy systems and systems that tie into it. Eventually you might need the stars need to align a little bit. Maybe you're going to start building a crafting system or something like that, and that's going to tie into it. So then you would, you could consider yourself a game economy designer in that sense. So you're doing bits. It's not black and white, right? There's some people do a bit of game economy design in their design, but it's really like getting into game design and then working on that. And the economy guys are going to focus on that part of it. So um, yeah, get into game dev, I can't stress, get a really good education, as well. It's that kind of job that lends itself to that type
When
of
you say good
development.
education, specifically for game economy, do you mean math?
Uh, yeah, I would say math, like computer science, is always solid. I mean, don't get me wrong, like the games courses have got way better since I was, you know,
Yeah.
2004 when I started studying it, and now the games courses, the vocational courses are superb now. They're way better. So yeah, that's also awesome to do that. But um, yeah, math is a really really good starting point for game economy. Computer science, other things. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that's probably the best.
Economy degree, we can call it. I,
Uh,
I just
could I mean could help, but like I said, that was like the misconception a little
it's
bit.
too
But
theoretical,
I
I
don't.
think, man. I think it's way too theoretical. Learning about economy at university. This is just me. Because, like, what are they teaching? The economy is changing every year.
I mean, it's like I'm not a yeah, man. My knowledge of macroeconomics is just not surprisingly not that good.
There you go. And also, you don't need that to be a game economist on the game anyway. That's my thoughts. Sweet. Charlie, I want to close off with why did you write a book?
I my I was working away, and then the publisher, the acquiring editor, somebody reached out to me, I think on LinkedIn, and said we've got an opening. We found your profile. Would you be interested in writing a book? Um, I I'm not honestly sure why I was approached with that, but it was very very nice to be asked. So I pitched for it. You go through a bit of a process. You pitch. You write some proposals, etc., and then it came back with an offer. So it was more something that just landed kind of in my lap. But it was really nice to be offered the chance to write it. And it's like it was written. I think part of it was that they wanted like a, a sort of easily digestible guide for something, something that's quite a new discipline. It's not an encyclopedia, the book. It's not like the really deep, huge amount of theory and everything. It's more like it's written from a practical standpoint of what you do on the job and getting in and, um, like the sort of basic skills and everything like that. So, but it was a really cool project to write. It was really hard work because I had to do that as well as release a game at the same time. So I was spending a lot of late nights, a lot of weekends writing. But it's really cool to put stuff on paper. You really see, what information you know and what you don't know, and all the gaps when you start writing it down.
So that's Game Economy Design, Metagame, Monetization, and Live Operations by Charlie Czerkawski. Amazing. So, best way for people to find that? Do you know? Is it just Googling that online, Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon and Google. You can buy it off Routledge.com, which is the publisher's website. You can get there, but Amazon is the best place.
Sweet. Perfect. Charlie, thank you so much. Anything you want to leave people with that we haven't covered today?
Uh, only no matter what was happening with games and the way the industry is, it's a really really awesome career. So regardless of what you do, the games industry is a ton of fun. For people, we have like a lot of fun every day. We're sort of surrounded by the thing that we are passionate about. And you go home, you play video games, you get your mind swimming with it, and then you're going every day and you're building them, and that buzz you get, releasing is hard work, but then you get those releases and you're surrounded by it, and it's a lifestyle really. It's not there. You don't do it for the money. It's a lifestyle rather than a job. I would never do anything else. I've always wanted to do it since I was tiny, and I still would always keep doing it.
Sweet. Actually, the first time someone described it like that, it's a lifestyle because it's interesting. Like, no one shits on doctors for working ages and ages with low pay because, like, it's just like there's almost. Sorry, I just want to close with this. Like my best friend, he recently just graduated as a doctor. He's doing his residency, and it's kind of a thing. Like, he can pretty much only date other doctors because it's such a lifestyle thing. And I don't know, hearing you describe like the gaming career as a lifestyle and making sure people understand that before they want to break in, I think just frames it a little bit, right? Like, you're not just going to come in, clock in, sorry, clock out, expect to get loads of money. It's definitely something that you want to, I guess, live in and out of work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's always around you. You never you're kind of never away from it as such. But I also love it around all other parts of life. I have a lot of other interests and things I want to do, and it sort of keep coming back to games as a thing that sort of my PlayStation makes my home feel like a home. So it's always there.
Perfect. Charlie, where can people find you? Get in touch.
I can reach me, Charlie Lee Czerkawski is my full name. It's on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place, like for anything that's in terms of like professional communication. You can find me on LinkedIn, and yeah, that's definitely the best place.
Sweet. Charlie, thank you so much. And everyone at home, subscribe. It's probably been a while. And yeah, definitely check the book and Charlie out. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone, and later.